Everybody. This is the lesson for May 24th. The title is Repent of Injustice. And I am going to read from the Message. I like reading from it because it's contemporary language, and the lesson, doesn't require a lot of explanation because it's spoken in the way that we talk. So let's get ready. This comes from the 22nd chapter of Jeremiah, the 1st through the 10th verses. And I'm going to add something in that I read to you last week. I'm going to read it again because it is so pertinent to the way I'm going to discuss this lesson today. It says, God's orders. Go to the royal palace and deliver this message. Say, listen to what God says, O King of Judah, you who sit on David's throne, you and your officials and all the people who go in and out of these palace gates. This is God's message. Attend to matters of justice. Set things right between people. Rescue victims from their exploiters. Don't take advantage of the homeless, the orphans, the widows. Stop murdering. If you obey these commands, then kings who follow in the line of David will continue to go in and out of these palace gates, mounted on horses and riding in chariots, they and their officials and the citizens of Judah. But if you don't obey these commandments, then I swear, God's decree, this palace will end up a heap of rubble. This is God's verdict on Judah's royal palace. I number you among my favorite places. It is like the loving hills of Gilead, like the soaring peaks of Lebanon. Yet I swear I'll turn you into a wasteland, as empty as a ghost town. I'll hire a demolition crew, well equipped with sledgehammers and wrecking bars, pound the country to a pulp and burn it all up. Travelers from all over will come through here and say to one another, why would God do such a thing to this wonderful city? They'll be told, because they walked out on the covenant of their God, took up with other gods and worshiped them. Don't weep over dead King Josiah. Don't waste your tears. Weep for his exiled son. He's gone for good. He'll never see home again. For this is God's word on Salem, son of Josiah, who succeeded his father as king of Judah. He's gone from him, gone for good. He'll die in the place they've taken him to. He'll never see home again. And I read this to you last week, but I'm going to read it to you again, and I think you'll understand why. Doomed to him who builds palaces but bullies people, who makes a fine house but destroys lives, who cheats his workers and won't pay them for their work, who'll say, I'll build me an elaborate mansion with spacious rooms and fancy windows. I'll bring in rare and expensive woods and the latest interior decor. So that makes you a king? Living in a fancy palace? Your father got along fine, didn't he? He did what was right and treated people fairly, and things went well with him. He stuck up for the down and out, and things went well for Judah. Isn't this what it means to know me? But you're blind and brainless. All you think about is yourself, taking advantage of the weak, bulldozing your way, bullying victims. This lesson is pertinent to the lives that we're living today. This lesson is pertinent to what's going on right here today across the world, but especially we know it to be going on here in the United States of America. We have a president who cares more about winning to be president for 4 more years than he does standing up for what's right. There are many Christians who think that we shouldn't talk about political things, that we should only stick to the lessons of old. We should only talk about what was meant in the Old Testament. But one thing about the CE Askew class is that every student that I'm aware of studies the Bible. So they got a pretty good understanding of the Old Testament and the New Testament and what things mean. So often we make our lesson relevant to what's going on today. And today it is, in my leading, it is very important for us to understand that putting economics first over the lives of people, the lives of poor people, the lives of justice, of doing justice in this country, makes us a great country. Not how much money we have or how well our economy is going or whether or not the world respects our president. It's important that we respect our president. And right now, our dear, dear president, your dear, dear president, is not acting in a way that he's putting people first. He believes that if we have a great economy, it won't matter how many people have died. It will not matter how many people are sick. But God looks at us from everything I can understand in the Old Testament as well as what Jesus taught us. Jesus told us that the greatest commandment is to treat our neighbor as we would like to be treated. And so this lesson about changing our unjust behaviors in this country, changing the way that we treat the poor, the orphan, the widow, thinking that people don't have homes because they don't have jobs, and at the same time making those who are rich richer and less willing to hire people, thinking that because of the color of our skin that we are to keep this country a certain color is ignorant thinking. Because what color we are is not who we are. Who we are is who we are on the inside. Who we are is who God made us to be. And so this particular lesson, for us to repent of injustice, the purpose of which I think is to tell us that if we want our country to be great, the greatest thing we can do in our country is to make sure that our laws are fair, that when people break those laws, that they're treated equally. I don't believe that anybody listening to me would think that it is okay to plan to kill a person because he's running down the street. I don't care what neighborhood he's running down the street in. If he has not committed a crime, he ought to continue to do the healthy thing, running, making himself stronger, and not be killed because somebody says to him, "What are you doing in my neighborhood?" I've had that experience. I know what it's like to be stopped. It was a long time ago, but then I hear of others being stopped in the same way today. When my husband was a student at North Carolina State, we happened to be on Newbern Avenue. Hillsborough Street, not Newbern Avenue, Hillsborough Street. And we were stopped by the police. And he asked us what we were doing in the neighborhood. And Brad said to him, "Well, right around the corner is where I live." And he said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he says, "Well, I'm a student at State, and I live right around the corner." And he said, "Well, we've had some robberies out here." That's the first thing he thought of, was that we look like robbers. I can assure you there was nothing in our car that would give him an indication that we had been breaking into anybody's house, the way we were dressed, none of that. But because of the color of our skin and because we were on Hillsborough Street, we were stopped. This is continuing to happen today. We're talking about some 50 years later. A young man, 26 years old, was killed because he was running down the street. Now they have 3 suspects. This is an injustice. Christians of the world, we got to stand up. You may not have a pulpit. You may not have a radio show. You may not be on the video talking about what the Bible has told us about injustice. But you have an opportunity to change the way you think, and that will matter. You have an opportunity when someone brings this up and says, well, he shouldn't have been in that neighborhood. It is your job. It is your job at that moment as a Christian to speak truth to whatever situation that is. And that's where power is. That's what's good. That's what we are here for. We are here to bring goodness to the world. We're not here to join this crazy thinking that people have had for centuries and centuries. We are here to stand up for the weak. We're not just here to give food to the food bank. We're not just here to give money to the Red Cross. All those things are good, but there's more for us to do. And so if there's a petition being circulated that we want the United States government to investigate something, we need to sign that petition. This week, someone called me and told me about a sermon that is on YouTube. And I just hope that you will take your time to go to that sermon and look at it. Because this guy says it so much better than I'm saying it. His name is Reverend Otis Moss. He is a minister, I think it's the Trinity Church in Chicago, Illinois. And the title of his sermon is Crossroads and Lynchings. And he gives us a history of the way that this thing has happened over the years, where because people's skin color is different. And one of the things that, that they've been killed. I'm sorry, I didn't finish that sentence. One thing that just shocked me, and I work to keep up with these things, but there is, toward the end, there's a scrolling, and it is the name of all of those people who have been killed in our country in this way since Trayvon Martin was killed. There is a name before his, and then I didn't count all the names. But please look at this video. You go to YouTube, you go to YouTube, Otis Moss, and the sermon is Crossroads and Lynchings. There may be more, I've forgotten, I looked at it last week. But I tell you, if you do that, you will get it. There is no point to us going to church. There is no point to us studying the Bible. There is no point to us reading Sunday school lessons if it's not going to change our hearts and our lives and our behavior. If we do not, as Christians, stand against injustice, then our country is going to be laid to waste. I can't tell you how. God hasn't given me that sight. But if he promised it to Judah in Jeremiah 22, 1 through 10, if he promised that to them, he is not a respecter of persons. He'll promise that to us. And so I will tell you this as I close. God expects us to do as thus saith the Lord. And thus saith the Lord is that we are to stand up against injustice, not just for ourselves, not just for our children, but for the whole world. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next Sunday. Love you. Bye-bye.